What is going on, Bucs fans? Evan Wanish here, back at you with yet another video talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And today we're going to be talking about an article that I did on BucsNation.com. You can go ahead and read it right now. Head over to BucsNation.com and read that article, as well as read all my other stuff as well. And not just me, all the other great writers that we have on staff there as well. So be sure to check that out. But we're going to be talking about players to watch for this upcoming preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is the Buccaneers' first preseason game of the season, of the 2023 season, I should say, and it is in Tampa on Friday night. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. I'm not going to spend too much time on this first one, but I talk about the quarterbacks. We're talking about Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, and even John Wolford. I shout out John Wolford, who has been good in training camp. So, Baker Mayfield, it is being reported by PewReport.com that Baker Mayfield will be the starter versus Pittsburgh. So he'll be out there with guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, the first team offensive line. Kyle Trask will get the start week 2 versus the Jets, which is the next preseason game. But I'm curious to see, Baker Mayfield in Buccaneers uniform. Curious to see how these guys perform. There's pressure under the bright lights. There really is. There's going to be added pressure. And I think this is where the quarterback competition is going to be won or lost. Not particularly this game or this, Baker Mayfield has a drive or two. But I think the practices, you have to take the practices into account. But I think the big thing is the games. How do you perform in the games with an actual defense that's trying to come at you and trying to hit you? It's going to be a lot more physical on Friday night than it is any practice that they've had. So, how do you respond? How do you hit your receivers? Can you get the offense in sync with the crowd being there and everything and all the distractions going on in between plays and stuff? That matters, I think. So, I think that's what's going to determine who wins the battle. So I'm not gonna, like I said, not gonna spend too much time on that. If you want a little bit more detail, go over to BucsNation.com, read the article. But without further ado, let's get right into the next one, which is a trio of wide receivers that I've spoke of on the channel a little bit here, and that's 6th-round pick Trey Palmer. Was picked out of Nebraska. The Buccaneers traded up to get him, so they clearly like him. And Trey Palmer, since training camp is open, has done nothing but impress me. He has sure hands, good speed. And honestly, I'm surprised he fell to the 6th round. I was surprised on draft day when he fell to the 6th round, but even watching him here, I'm like, man, like this is a good football player. So I'm curious to see how he does against competition again, against a corner who's probably going to be a little bit more physical, maybe, against an actual defense where you're going to have to remember plays. And again, especially for these rookies, like it's the first time under the lights of an NFL stadium. Like, I know it's not a regular season game. There's a little bit less pressure, but for the guy that's not guaranteed to make the roster, he's got to show up in those moments. So another guy's undrafted free agent rookie out of Maryland, Raheem Jarrett. Now, Jarrett has had a few drops recently, but early on in camp, he flashed a lot, flashed some sure hands, and was an explosive player for the Buccaneers. So I know there's a lot of hype when he signed as an undrafted free agent. There was a lot of hype about him because this was a guy that maybe could have been drafted in the 6th or 7th round, ended up falling to free agency, went to the Buccaneers. So I know there's a lot of excitement around Raheem Jarrett. So I'm very curious to see how he performs as well. And the other one is a second-year player, Devin Tompkins. And Tompkins hasn't really come on until just recently. He's made some spectacular catches. I think we all saw I was there in person for it as a media member, but I think we all saw the big acrobatic catch they made off the pass for Baker Mayfield in the indoor practice one night. He's returned punts. Obviously, he did that last year as well. I think that only helps his case to make the team. But I'm curious to see, can he make some of those catches in game? Like it's a different animal in game, but I'm curious to see. So he's got really sure hands, and he's flashed. He's got nice speed, nice quick. He's shifty and in small spaces, and he has flashed a lot over the past 4 or 5 days, I would say. Really been impressed with Devin Tompkins. So keep an eye out for him and keep an eye out for those other 2 receivers. I think Tampa Bay is going to have a pretty tough decision because I doubt they're going to be able to keep all 3 of them. One of them might try to sneak on the practice squad. Maybe. I doubt they're going to be able to keep all 3 of them. If they also want to keep like a veteran, like a David Moore also, I don't think they're going to keep 7 receivers, but We'll see. And I think those three, though, are guys to really look at, especially because Kyle Trask might be thrown to some of them as well. So that'd be cool to see. Another guy is our first defensive player, and it is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Now, I've talked about JTS a bunch on the channel here. He was one of the breakout players that I had in a previous article for Bucs Nation. And here's the thing. Here's my issue with JTS so far. He just hasn't stood out. Like, he hasn't stood out as much as I would have liked him to, especially entering such a critical and important year for him. This is year three. And he had 4 sacks his rookie season. It was good. It's a good rookie season. I mean, he was a rotational piece. 4 sacks as a rotational piece as a rookie. Can't complain with that. He was expected, though, to have a bigger role and play better when the Buccaneers decided to let Jason Pierre-Paul go. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka became the starter, and then he got 4 sacks again. So I think the Buccaneers are hoping for big things out of him. I don't know how much he's going to play, but I do hope that when he does play, he flashes in this game just to show that, like, hey, his inactivity, his little quiet practices aren't really a huge deal because just from what I've seen and what I've read, when I haven't been there, he just hasn't really flashed that much. So really looking forward to seeing Joe Tryon-Shoyinka in action against. It's tough for defensive linemen and offensive linemen. It's tough for those guys in training camp sometimes. So I'm hoping that's the case for JTS and he can get going. One other guy is Carlton Davis. Now, Carlton Davis, I'll admit, he hasn't had an interception. He hasn't. Well, I think I correct that. He has had an interception. He hasn't had many interceptions in camp, mostly because the quarterbacks just aren't throwing their way, aren't throwing his way. He's blanketing the receivers. He's been very good, and he made some comments that he's gonna have to back up. We talked about it on this channel. I know people have talked about it a lot. Um, and he's trying to back it up. And right now in training camp, he is. But again, it's a different animal in an actual game. So hopefully, Carlton Davis can translate his strong camp so far to have a nice night against the Steelers. Again, another player. I don't know how much he's going to play, if at all. But if he does play, I'm going to be very curious and keeping my eye out for him. And it's a big year. I think he's like entering his prime now. Like he's basically in his prime, entering his prime. And I think Carlton Davis, can he turn into a lockdown corner? I'm not sure. It would be huge for the Buccaneers if he could. I really wouldn't care about interceptions if you can just shut down the opposing team's wide receiver. So wouldn't really care much about the interceptions if they're just not throwing your way. If that whole side of the field shut down. Very curious to see Carlton Davis in action. And like I said, the Buccaneers have a 90-man roster right now. It ain't I picked out as a couple of players. There's many more players that you can keep an eye on, and I'm gonna have another article out next week talking about the other players, a few more, and I'll have a video covering that as well. But there's many more. So let me know who you are looking forward to seeing on Friday night for the Buccaneers in the preseason opener. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and talk soon.